Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to today's live video. I always forget this. What is the topic of our video again? Interpersonal dynamics.
Interpersonal relationships and dynamics.
Interpersonal relationships and dynamics. Okay, so we're going to be going through a worksheet today, and I've got so many screens open that I'll just lose my mouse. Okay, so today we're sort of following on from last week's. So the worksheet is titled Communication Skills, and that's in the context of dealing with difficult relationships with family members, employers, employees, friends, and the like. And it's in the context of that in recovery. So coming out of a treatment process and sort of going into going home and having to deal with those relationships, right? Do you recall what we discussed during last week's video, Lario?
We discussed conflict, so how to identify types of conflict. So remember we said to keep a thought journal, and in the journal you kind of note and jot down when you have conflict with somebody, what the context was, what was your part in it, what you could try differently the next time, what the other person's response was. So it's like tracking or monitoring your conflict over a 2-week period. And then we said today we're going to talk a little bit more about communication skills in terms of how to resolve or to attempt to manage some of those conflict discussions a bit easier with some of the tools that we're going to look at today.
Okay. All right, cool. So I'm just quickly posting the link on the various channels. This always just takes a couple of seconds. Let me just quickly get to the last one. And there we go. Paste, send. There we go. No? Yes. All right. So that's sorted. Okay, so before we get into it, Lario, I've got a quick speech that I've got to just get through that I've got prepared here. Okay, so what is Mariette Cafe? Mariette Cafe is let me just switch this over. Jana says hi. Well, welcome, Jana. Thanks. She says hi, Lario.
Hi, Jana. Hi, Jana. Oh, nice to see you, or your profile picture.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to read through this quickly. Mariette Cafe is a community of like-minded individuals that are actively pursuing a process of self-discovery. Community is located within a private and unsearchable or secret group on Facebook. So there are 2 privacy settings for Facebook groups. Public, anyone or on or off Facebook can see who's in the group and what they post. And the other one is private, which means that only members can see who's in the group and what they post. The group has an additional setting activated, which also makes it a secret Facebook group. So this means that it is a private group which is completely hidden from non-members. Only members of the group can find it, and new members can only be added at the invite of admins. Nobody outside of the group will be aware of its existence except when I speak about it here, and nobody can apply to join the group. So only admin can invite you and add you to the group. So we broadcast live videos like this one to a few public channels, but I'll get into that in a moment. The Mariette Cafe group has exclusive access to loads of content that isn't available on any of the Mariette public channels. Okay, so the vast majority of the members on the Mariette Cafe group are patients that have been through the Mariette inpatient dual diagnosis rehab process. In a lot of ways, the group is structured as an aftercare program, and it is designed to keep individuals engaged in a program of recovery, or as we like to call it, a process of ongoing self-discovery. So what is the Mariette Helper? The Mariette Helper is a Facebook profile that is essentially represented as a singular and personified version of a group of Mariette mental health and addiction specialists. So the Mariette Helper Facebook profile is a public profile, so anyone on or off Facebook can see any of the content that Mariette Helper posts. The Mariette Helper profile serves as somewhat of a window to the services offered to the Mariette Cafe community. So normally a workshop, lecture, mutual self-help meeting that is broadcast as a live video to the Mariette Cafe group has its first 10 to 20 minutes broadcast to the public channels, like the Mariette Helper profile and the Mariette Facebook page or the ARC Facebook page. This is so that anyone who's not on the exclusive Mariette Cafe group can benefit from some of the content that the Mariette Cafe group is generating, so that they can get an idea of what the Mariette Cafe is all about before they make the commitment to joining. So for today's broadcast, we are currently broadcasting to the ARC Mariette Facebook page, the Mariette Helper Facebook profile, and the Duly Diagnosed YouTube channel for the first 10 to 20 minutes. We are also broadcasting to the Mariette Cafe group, and that broadcast will see the live broadcast through to the end of the 50 or 60 minutes that it takes to complete the workshop. If you're a member of the Mariette Cafe group, make sure you're watching via the correct channel so you don't get cut off when the live feed ends on the public channels. Anyone on the public or private channels is welcome to jump on and participate in the workshop. The link will be in the comments, and you can click on it and it will let you join via video or audio only, whatever suits you. If you don't want to participate via video or audio, you can also participate by posting a comment on the channel that you're watching on. You can also phone in if you like. My number should be on the screen. I'm going to put this banner up and you can phone in on the number that comes up on the screen. And that's that, eh? So that's done. Let's get into the worksheet, Lario.
Okay.
And yeah, thanks again for joining. Jana, welcome. Worksheet. There we go. Okay, so communication skills. Saying what you mean clearly and in a way that is respectful to both yourself and to others is a skill that must be learned. So is hearing what others are trying to tell you. Effective communication takes two basic skills: expressing yourself clearly and two, listening actively. In this exercise, you will learn how to communicate more effectively and how to teach this to others. Please list two people with whom you have the most trouble communicating and why you think this happens. Then do the same for people with whom you find it easy to communicate. So I think I mentioned, sorry, I see a comment come up here. Okay, so Lario, I've got a bit of a theory. So the people. So I like abstract ideas, right? And I find that not everybody's interested in abstract ideas in the same way that I am. Okay, so sometimes I find that a bit of a challenge with regards to communicating to certain people, with certain people. And I think that sort of boils down to like a personality difference, right?
100%, Ryan. I think if you look at an IQ test as an example, an IQ test has specifically verbal abilities as one of the screening aspects that it looks at. And certain people score very high on the verbal part of an IQ test, and some people score very low on those parts. And often, if you go for an aptitude test or those psychologists that tell you what to go and study one day, they look at the verbal part to see what type of profession you'll be good at. So they'll say, if you score high on the verbal part, you might be good at becoming a lawyer, because then you have verbal skills to think on your feet, to get your message across clearly. You can play around with words in a clever way. And then, there are some people where they would say, you know what, maybe it's best for you to talk less, listen more, and follow, the instructions. So some people are better equipped to work with their hands, or, they're more inclined to understand mechanical and 3D type of processing. So that, I think, has to do with personality, yes, but also on some level your IQ abilities, which probably in some way informs your personality as well.
So just listen, this is a question born out of ignorance, but is cognitive abilities directly linked to one's IQ?
Sorry, say again, you broke up a bit. Is cognitive abilities directly linked to IQ?
Yeah.
Yes, basically it's the way in which, yes, Yes. So it's basically how thoughts are processed. Well, firstly, how information is taken in, how that information is processed, and what the output is, and that all happens cognitively in your brain. So yes, they are very closely linked.
So, okay, back to the worksheet. People with whom it's hard to talk. So, number one on my list is my 4-year-old daughter. Okay, so she's incredibly disagreeable, and I don't know if I think it's probably got to do with a combination of like anxiety, but it seems like it's just a personality trait, because before, if I needed to do something or ask her to do something, or before the words even leave my mouth, the answer's already a big no. And
Yes.
so like that's, my son who's 6, like he never really exhibited those kinds of personality traits. He's more of a compassionate kind of little guy. But my daughter's she's like her old man, and it's like, no, and I will not do what you tell me. And it's like, that's the automatic default sort of answer. So I think personality and understanding that people have different types of personalities is a very good way of just sort of recognizing that, we all have difficulty communicating with other people here.
Yeah. Ryan, 100%. I think at the end of the day, that's so important. Temperament, as they say, you are born with a certain type of temperament, which again can be informed by genes, but also has its own, random application. So at the end of the day, we are all born differently automatically from birth. And it's important to know who you're talking to. So with your kids, as an example, you might have a completely different approach with your daughter than you have with your son, specifically in terms of things like discipline, because that's when communication, is considered most needed, probably, is effective, clear communication. But so different approaches might work differently on your kids. The one might flourish more in terms of a reward type of process, and the other one might fall in line quicker with a consequence type of process. And yeah, I think temperament definitely informs that to a big extent, / personality.
So yeah, that's my sort of list of people with whom it's hard to talk, and why it's hard. Another example is I suppose my father-in-law, I find it difficult to sometimes have a conversation with him about abstract ideas, but he's a very practical kind of person, right? So he I think he's more interested in actual things than he is interested in abstract ideas. And that sort of makes it a bit difficult for me, and I think it makes it difficult for him too. Again, though, I think that's why the spreadsheet's so important, because it's important to recognize those things, because it helps inform the way that we speak to people and communicate with them. People with whom it's easy to talk to, and why it's easy. So I enjoy chatting to the psychologist at ARC, to be honest. And I enjoy that because of the abstract ideas, and that, like, I find them really interesting, and I find, and I feel like I can talk easily. I think it's difficult for them sometimes, because I start to stammer and struggle to find words, and there's some kind of, I think there's definitely some cognitive struggles that I have sometimes, but I would relate that to probably the ADHD. But I enjoy talking to people who have, again, enjoy abstract ideas. I struggle to talk to people that are sort of wildly extroverted, if I could put it that way, or not wildly extroverted, but like, high up on the spectrum of extroversion, because I'm somewhat of an introvert, right? So I kind of like try and, I saw this image where it talks about extroverts gain energy from having conversations with large groups of people, whereas introverts lose energy when they have these conversations, with big groups of people. Is that true? Does that make sense, eh?
I think everybody that's been to ARC would know, if we want to use myself as an example, that I definitely gain, or my batteries get recharged, or I gain energy when I'm dealing with a group of people where, I think somebody that might have to do 2 groups a day would feel very drained after that, So I definitely think that's the case. I know sometimes when I come to work and I'm extremely sluggish, or I'm in a bad mood, or I feel very low, my mood completely changes after I do a group therapy session, as an example, where another psychologist might say, oh, I feel completely drained and exhausted after a group therapy session. So I do think there's value in that, or truth in that.
And, another thing for why it could be hard to communicate with some people is that, some people just don't take care of themselves, right? And I know that is true for me at times, in the sense that, I might stay up all night working, right? So stay up until like 2 in the morning working, and sort of, somebody who does that, it doesn't generally wake up in moods all the time. If your eating isn't, if that's irregular, you aren't consistently eating properly, and sort of just taking care of yourself in general, I think it can become, your moods become dysregulated, right?
Yes. And concentration and focus. I mean, I think anybody that watched our video last week can contest that both you and I were not at our best because we didn't sleep well, and we've been, working really hard. So sometimes your communication also doesn't come across as effectively. If you've had those uninterrupted sleep patterns, or, like you say, eating patterns or things like that. So when you're too much in that bubble and too focused on one thing, it's sometimes difficult to switch your focus to a bunch of other conversations, and other people's needs and so forth.
So let's look at one more question before we switch over to the private group. I have so many screens. I'm going to lose this mouth. Okay. Now we'll look at communication styles and how they work. We each have a favorite style we use most. Please think about your habits and those of others in your life. A, aggressive, expressing yourself with little regard for others' rights, thoughts, or feelings. Aggressive communication can be abusive and judgmental, may include name calling, yelling, interrupting, sarcasm, ridicule, and hostile body language. Be passive aggressive, not expressing yourself openly, hinting, talking behind others' back, sarcasm, constant complaining, expecting to know what you think, feel, or want without telling them, refusing to talk when others can see you're upset. Passive, not expressing yourself in ways you fear might upset others, or possibly in any way at all, giving short, uninformative answers, agreeing with whatever others say. D, assertive, expressing your thoughts, feelings, and wishes clearly without ignoring those of others. Being able to say no in a way that respects both others and yourself. Which of the styles described above
Hello. Ryan, sorry, can you hear me?
How long has my mic been off for?
About 30 seconds.
Oh.
I did send you a message. Sorry.
Oh. 30 seconds. So, okay. I was talking about the style that I can't stand having to deal with, and that's passive aggressive. So, it's, I'm a fan of, like, say what you need to say, and let's have a discussion about it, or an argument about it, or whatever it is. But that can be dangerous, eh? That can be dangerous, I think, as well. it's very difficult, I think. Yeah, communicating with others is challenging. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those styles are so interesting because when I read them the first time when we went through this, I could physically put every person I know into a certain box. And like you said, myself as an example, you can immediately see who falls where. And I can specifically categorize my family members there very quickly. But as you said, like for instance, myself, I don't deal very well with extremely aggressive, overt type of communication, although you do learn how to process those type of communication a bit better the more you work with some. Sorry, I'm reading while I'm talking now. But anyway, yeah, so at the end of the day, I think it's not impossible to deal with somebody else's communication style, but obviously what the worksheet is pointing to is that your assertive type of style is the best option. That's the communication style that will probably work with all the others, because firstly, you can stand your ground, you can say your say, but you can also actively listen to somebody else's point. But you can also have boundaries in place that you're not going to accept abusive type of communication, but you're also going to probe maybe for somebody that has a more passive type of style, so you're not just going to give up on a passive communicator, and you're not just going to avoid an aggressive communicator, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, I think so this one philosopher, there was a quote by him. I think it's other people are hell, or hell is other people. I don't know. I relate to that. I think that's a whole video. That one phrase or sentence is a whole video. So just maybe ignore what I just said. But my point being that it's difficult. It can be challenging. Yeah.
But I also think what's interesting is that reading that and looking at oneself, you kind of see that you also fluctuate between those communication styles depending on what mood you're in. I've adopted very aggressive type of communication styles when my patience are very short. But then in certain instances, a person comes across more assertive, maybe with family or colleagues or so. And then other times, maybe with unfamiliar people, or like you mentioned, parents-in-laws or whichever, you might become a bit more passive. So it's also interesting. Obviously, you have a predominant communication style, but it's also interesting that one can kind of shift in between those ones, depending on who you're dealing with and what the context is.
So we've got a lot of people on the Mariette Cafe group, and there's a good couple of questions that are coming up from that group. So I'm going to go through to the intermission. Anybody on the live channel, thank you guys for watching. If you want to join the Mariette Cafe, you can go to myrehab.com. It's myrehab.com, and you can find out more about how to become a member of the Mariette Cafe group. So thanks guys for watching. I'm going to go over to the intermission now and switch over to that group. Hopefully I can do it in the 30 seconds that it gives me. See you in the group, Lario.
Okay.